international community is as important to human rights work as any other community. I think that Utrecht is a beautiful place to be in, and the people are very welcoming. Everybody is smiling at me. People are so welcoming. Utrecht has put in deliberate efforts to ensure that they are a human rights hub and they are accepting of all human rights. You know, I came across the Rainbow Pathway, the longest bike pathway at the university, and I had a chance to be there yesterday, and I really loved it. For the biggest university in the Netherlands to have a rainbow pathway, like that shows that, well, your tribe is welcomed here. That and even like Shelter City having the exposition at the Dome, you know, is quite something that shows that Utrecht as a city respects human rights, but not only like specific human rights, but human rights for all, and LGBTI persons can feel safe in the city.
So, a warm applause for Caroline Rucah. So, welcome, Caroline.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah, I would like to ask you some questions, and later it will also be possible for the audience to ask some questions. So, what do you think after seeing the documentary? So, Caroline, in the documentary, you told us about the organization, the Western Kenya LGBTQ Feminist Forum. What led you to take this big step and to start this organization, knowing all of the risks that are involved?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lizzie. And so like what made me be in a position to start, like come up with other LGBT women to start the organization mostly was I've been in the movement, in the LGBTI movement since 2012 when I started my journey to being out. It started in 2012. So I've been in the movement since then, but for a very long time, even when I joined the movement, we were within the LGBTI movement, and mostly within the LGBTI movement, the programming that used to happen was mostly for gay and bisexual men, and we felt as LGBTQ women, that was around 2015, 2016, that the programming was not, like it wasn't meeting our needs. So we started having a conversation that as LGBTQ persons, we needed to form a movement. We needed to come together to have programs that would then be directed to us, you know, would then address several issues that we were facing as LGBT persons. So I think because there was no space, especially feminist spaces, within the general LGBTI movement in Kenya, is one of the reasons that myself and a few other like-minded LGBT persons within Western Kenya decided to come up with Western Kenya LGBT Feminist Forum in 2016. The journey had been long, actually, because in 2016, when we thought about even having the organization, we were thinking about a loose structure, a place where we would come as LGBTQ persons and vent and, have conversations, talk about issues that are affecting us as LGBTQ persons, talk about the reason why we are feeling the mainstream LGBTI movement is not inclusive of our voices and our needs. So that is how we started in 2016, by just creating that space, ensuring that, we had monthly feminist forums to just sit down and try and have that conversation. We officially registered our organization in 2020, that is last year, because we had actually, we thought this is the time. This is the time to, formalize ourselves. We know what we want. We know what milestones we want to achieve. We know, the vision is very clear right now. Then we need to formalize our organization. It wasn't easy because, as our operational name is Western Kenya LGBT Feminist Forum, our official name and legal name is Let's Be Tested Queens, CBO. So in Kenya, it's criminal, as I say in the video. Same-sex acts are criminal between consenting adults, but also registration of organizations that then, support the rights of LGBTI persons is criminal. So for us to register, we had to, cover up the issue of LGBTI within the Let's Be Tested Queens, so that we can formally register as an organization. Yeah. So that is quite the journey and how we started. Yeah.
And in the documentary, you also mentioned the difficulties of being a human rights defender, and, for example, that your landlord didn't accept that you support LGBT persons. How do you cope with that? How do you have the support in Kenya?
So in Kenya, most of the time, for LGBTI persons, as LGBTI persons in the country, we constantly need to create various spaces, we constantly need, because being an LGBT person is very political in our country generally, and with laws that then don't even back you up, it's very problematic. So what we always do is constantly create spaces. I was evicted from my house 2 months ago because there were claims to my then landlord that I am a homosexual and I am promoting homosexuality. And we were using my house as a safe space because as a young organization, we didn't have an office space. We needed to operate. My house was also a temporary shelter to LGBTQ persons that had been evicted. So they would come there temporarily before we get redress, before we get a support system for them to be absorbed. So that actually exposed my house and my neighborhood. Actually, it became a security incident. So when I got that notice to leave, it was an illegal notice. As a Kenyan, I would have said, I'm a Kenyan, I know my rights, you can't evict me like this. But the claims that I am a homosexual being the reason that I'm evicted, I had to run. I had not to stay there because it would have posed a security incident to me and my family generally. So as LGBTI persons, we try to put in place steps and measures to always try and navigate the system. It is not easy, but we always, try and find a support social system where you can easily call and say, I am looking for a house, it is urgent, people are out there, they're trying to help you look for a house, because claims of homosexuality to an LGBTI person or to a human rights defender puts yourself at risk and your family at risk in the forefront. So but also as you are carrying out your normal day-to-day life as an LGBTI person, it is a security threat in itself. You are living with 1 foot in and 1 foot out, literally, because you don't know when insecurity will strike. You don't know what will happen. That will need you to up and run, because if you don't up and run, then your life is at risk. Then your security is put at risk. So one of the things that we do as LGBTI persons is you stay at one point, but you're ready for that moment where this point will not be conducive enough. And it is actually even worse for LGBTI persons who are human rights defenders. It becomes even worse considering like the area that we are working in is Western Kenya. Western Kenya is mostly rural and just a bit peri-urban. So there is issues around culture and and just the communities around and how they don't support homosexuality and how they feel about homosexuality, about the fact that it is a foreign concept, among other things, that would generally put you at risk. And as an LGBT person, you have to constantly be having this at the back of your head, somewhere really close, because you don't know when insecurity will strike. We are always like a political statement away from being at risk, and politicians use this a lot. One day you're okay, like you've made so many gains as an LGBT movement with your advocacy work. The next day it's elections, and the first thing they always run to is issues around LGBTI persons. LGBTI persons are causing corona in the country. LGBTI persons are causing droughts in the country. Yeah, like everything else has to be blamed on, this vice that is called LGBTI persons. So then you're like a political statement away from insecurity that you have to constantly be checking. Yeah.
And do you think there are some changes within Kenya and how LGBTI persons are seen? Are there some positive developments?
Yes, I wouldn't say it is all bad, Like 10 years ago when the movement was starting in Western Kenya, like even having like a space where LGBT persons would just come and even conduct programs, even landlords like allowing you to use their space as an office was very problematic, because the public would realize that this landlord has rented an organization that is supporting LGBT rights, and then they will come and burn down that property. So even like having these like landlords that even accept an LGBT organization to be within their premises is a risk. And it's actually progress, and it is progress despite the fact that like for an LGBT organization, of course they will like hike the rent, hike the security protocols, but having those kinds of spaces is progress. Also, like I think social media has contributed greatly to, like create visibility and just put a face on it. We carried out a research, we were part of a research on strategic communications some time back. And mostly the questions that were being asked around LGBTI persons to the general public, they were people that were saying there are no LGBTI persons in the country. They were people that were saying LGBTI persons are very rich and they are being funded by the whites. There are people that were saying LGBTI persons only come out at night like vampires, and there are so many stories and so many things, yeah. But I think social media and generally all our advocacy efforts have tried to put a face to the LGBTI persons. We have tried to delink that issue of this stereotype that an LGBTI person needs to look like, and this is really the LGBTI persons. We are your day-to-day people. We are your day-to-day citizens, And another thing is, as an organization, we always take the intersectional approach. We take the intersectional approach deliberately because, we want to be part of the women's rights movement. We want to be part of the social justice centers. And you can't be a social justice center and you're leaving a constituents that need this social justice out. So we deliberately put intersectionality at the core of all our advocacy actions. So we are able to penetrate spaces that would then mainly leave out LGBTI persons, would leave out trans women. Like the women rights movement, most of the times we were never there at all. But we are deliberately within these spaces and, put in efforts to clarify values, to, for attitude transformation. We are making gains when it comes to policies, especially when it comes to health and sexual reproductive health policies, where we ensure that LGBTI persons are included within the policies. So I wouldn't say it's all bad. the advocacy efforts that we are putting in are working. The advocacy efforts are bearing fruits, and the kind of conversation, the fact that we can like even have conversations around LGBTI persons is a plus. The fact that we have so many LGBTI persons coming out on social media, like TikTok has created a very good space for even younger LGBTQ persons. When I was that young, I could not have come out at that age, but like some social media platforms have created a platform where LGBTI persons within Kenya can freely come out to express themselves, yeah? And that is a plus, yeah.
I'm actually quite curious also for questions of the audience. We have what is it in English? Cubus? Well, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and Crisbel will throw the cubus, and then you can speak into the black part.
Is it on? Yeah, it's on. So, Caroline, what keeps you going? Because when I hear about, as a non-binary male-bodied person, I think I would be scared shitless. I would have such the urge to just run away and don't look back. But what keeps you going to keep fighting the fight?
Okay, can I take it? Yes. Yeah, so what keeps me going? What keeps me going is that I'm fighting for human rights, not only for the gays and lesbians and queer persons within Kenya, but also for myself. I am creating spaces for myself. As a queer, as a non-binary pansexual person that is living in a country that criminalizes my existence, the fact that I am in this fight is not only for those people, them guys, but also for myself, yeah? Another thing is that like I am really passionate about human rights and inclusion for all. And like even as a mother, I always believe that, you know, like this kind of information, like change would actually even begin at home, but also from an early stage, you know, from just change of mindset and what is actually put in the mind of people from the word go, then that would easily be picked from them. So I actually, even within my family, within my house, within my household, I raise my two children in like to be feminist or to like with the feminist principles, so that then they are accepting of everybody regardless, despite the fact that their mom is queer, despite the fact that people are different, they respect everyone. So I would really want to see a brighter future for my children and for myself. And I can only do that by ensuring that like they get it from you know, unit zero as they grow. Yeah. So I think that is like mostly my motivation. I am a queer person living in a country that criminalizes my existence. Well, I would really not just sit there. I would want that to change.
Thank you so much. I respect you very much for all the work you do, and I thank you for everything.
Yeah, is there somebody else who has a question? Yeah.
Hi. I have a question. So, if you can get arrested for supporting the movement, how does it work that in the documentary we see all the images of people being at the court? Like, how does that work? When do you get arrested and when not? Or is it random?
Yeah. So you can be arrested for supporting the movement. Most of the times, because of the law that criminalizes same-sex acts, they just assume, like, if they assume you're gay, you are arrested. We have a case in court. In 2009, there were two gay men that were arrested by the police. And this was because of an issue from the neighbors. The neighbors actually raised an issue that these people are gay, they need to be arrested, it is criminal to, you know, and these people, Kenya is a human rights state. We have actually ratified so many human rights and international mechanisms on human rights. So by the reason why we are even in court, we are in court currently, appealing to repeal this section of the penal code that criminalizes our existence. And the reason why we are also in court to do this is because we are saying, for you to enforce this law, you have to breach the human rights of this person. For you to enforce the penal code that criminalizes same-sex acts against, they always say it's against the order of nature. How will you prove against the order of nature if you don't breach privacy of this person? If you don't degrade this person? Because evasive tests are done to people to prove that they are homosexual. So that is you would be arrested on those bases, you are homosexual, there has been a complaint from neighbors, you are you are going against the law, and then you will be violated for them to prove that you are going against the law. So that is even the reason why we are appealing. There was the photos of the court the photos of the images of the court that you were seeing there were because we were in court to repeal that section of the penal code. And actually the court upheld the penal code. And currently we are appealing, and the grounds in which we are appealing is as simple as those. Very many gay persons, LGBT persons cannot access services because of the existence of this law. Because people will go back to this law and say,